Hi, my name's Dave Shindler. I'm the owner of Just Fishing Guide Service on the Susquehanna River. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about how to fish a tube jig. And this really goes for any type of bottom bouncing bait, whether it's a tube or a bass jig, a grub, any bait that you're going to fish directly along the bottom. I get a lot of people in my boat every year, and a tube on the river is a very common bait, and it's a great bait to fish. The biggest mistake that most people make is, first of all, they don't want to work a bait with their rod tip. They want to use the reel, almost like you're reeling a spinner bait or a crankbait, something like that. And the other thing is holding the rod at a very low angle. The two keys to tube fishing, actually there's three keys. The first is keeping your rod tip very high. Anytime you fish a tube, you want to keep your rod basically from the 10 o'clock to the 12 o'clock position. You're not making, and sometimes it is different, but in most cases, you're not making real big movements. You're trying to imitate a crayfish. So when you're working that bait, you want to just have that thing hop. You want it to look like a natural crayfish. There are times where a tube imitates a bait fish, and then you're going to work it a little bit different. However, when you're trying to imitate a crayfish, you want to make very short, very small hops with the bait. And to achieve that, the best thing to do is make your cast. Just once you feel the bait has fallen to the bottom, and you should always have bottom contact with this bait. You're just going to feel it bumping along the bottom. You want to keep your rod tip fairly high, 10 o'clock position, and just slowly work it up to the 12 o'clock position. Once you get to that position, reel back down and do it again. It's very simple. And again, you're never moving the bait with your reel. If you're moving it with your reel, first of all, that bait's just going to glide along the bottom. And there are times where they'll eat it like that, but in most cases, that's not the best way to fish it. So you're going to move it with your rod tip, 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, and you always want to imagine what is on the bottom. As you're dragging a bait, and one of the best ways to achieve this, your neighbors may think you're nuts, go out into your yard, go into your driveway, wherever you can go. If you live in a city, go to a park. Take a jig out, just maybe cut the hook off so you're not getting snagged every 5 seconds. Throw it out and just drag it. And learn to know what every little thing feels like, whether it's a rock or grass or wood, anything. That way when you get out on the water, you'll be able to imagine what's under the water and feel it. That way when you do get that telltale tick, you're dragging the bait and you feel like think, to set the hook. The biggest, and one of the biggest things with the tube jig is anytime you're in tough conditions, like today we have bluebird skies. The river has changed, and I'm on the Susquehanna River. The river has changed a good bit. We had water temperatures into the low to mid 60s last week. Today the river temperature is 53 degrees. It's early April, so we have many changing conditions. The river had been nice and clear for quite some time. We had a lot of rain and it got very dirty. The river's just starting to clean up again. So every day the conditions are somewhat different. You need to capitalize on those. And I quite honestly, I didn't start out throwing a tube jig this morning. I started out throwing a spinnerbait and caught a couple fish on a spinnerbait, but that bite was not real good. But again, tube fishing is a phenomenal way to catch fish. And the majority of the baits, and there's a host of colors. Mismo makes quite a few different baits. There's a lot of different tube companies out there. And I don't have an alliance to one. I throw right bites, I throw Mismos. This is one that was actually made by a friend of mine. Colors, and you can keep your colors simple. You're trying to imitate a crayfish, so your best way to do that is to use crayfish colors. I like green pumpkins, I like pumpkin seeds, your more natural hues, a little bit of flake in it, purple flake, some gold flake, that kind of stuff. But keep your bait simple. Different days. One day they'll really like to eat a very small tube. This is a 2.5 or a 3-inch tube, very skinny profile. Some days they'll want a big, bulky bait, and you never know. You can't go out and say, well, this is the only bait that I throw is this 3-inch tube, because every day will be a different day. Pick up a tube jig, put it on a regular insert head, find a current seam, fish at a lot of different places, because today the majority of the fish have been positioned in the current behind islands. Some days they're in the slack water, some days they're directly in current. But I will tell you this, if you go out and you start throwing the tube jig and you start catching fish when you're reeling it, if you're ripping it real fast, it's probably not the most productive bait that day. You can pick up a crankbait, you can pick up a spinner bait, maybe a jerk bait, a chatter bait, something like that, and throw that. But if you, on a day-to-day basis, always have a tube jig rigged if you're on a river system that has crayfish in it. And I'll guarantee you're going to catch more fish. If you'd like to check out my other tips and some other videos, you can look at my website at www.susquehannariverfishing.com.